Welcome to the Nation of History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Near the end of his life in Los Angeles, the legendary lawman Wyatt Earp sought to clear his name and confirm his version of the confrontation at the OK Corral. Retired from mining camps and police work, he died in January 1929, marking the close of an iconic chapter of American expansion. In Glenwood Springs, Buffalo Bill Cody was photographed for the last time on January 4, 1917, just 6 days before his death. The scout and performer who shaped the mystique of the West appears in front of local businesses, closing an era of shows that traveled the world and defined cultural frontiers. A military group prepares the sentence of prisoners labeled as bandits in Mexico around 1910. The record captures the harshness of social control and repression during the years of Mexican Revolution insurgency. Such practices were common to contain rebel forces and maintain order. The attack on the Wickenburg stagecoach on November 5, 1871, remains one of Arizona's most controversial episodes. The tragedy led to several deaths and sparked debate over who was responsible, feeding conspiracy theories that challenged official frontier investigations. Lakota leader Sitting Bull died in 1890 during an attempted arrest on the Standing Rock Reservation. A spiritual and political leader, his death happened amid tensions tied to the Ghost Dance movement, speeding up the loss of autonomy for native nations of the plains. Riding horses and mules, members of a hunting party on State Street in Santa Barbara show the overlap of rural life and urban growth in California. The presence of dogs and supplies suggests an organized outing, while the buildings in the background point to a shift toward modern life. Captain Jack Crawford embodied the many-sided spirit of the American West in 1881 as an adventurer, educator, and author. Popularly known as the Scout Poet, he used his frontier experience to write works that told the story of territorial expansion. His path joined military action with the era's cultural production. Archie Clement, identified on the left, was one of the most feared leaders in Bloody Bill Anderson's gang during the Civil War. His role in the Centralia attack in 1864 cemented his reputation for intense fighting before his death in 1866, reflecting the harshness of Confederate guerrillas in Missouri. Henry Newton Brown led a failed bank robbery in Medicine Lodge, Kansas. After being captured with his gang, they faced an uprising of armed locals who stormed the jail. The sheriff-turned-outlaw did not survive the confrontation in an episode of extreme mob justice. Telluride Band musicians pose with their brass instruments on the lawn at Bridal Veil Park in 1886. Photographer Charles Goodman captured the group in front of Colorado's towering waterfalls and mountains. Cultural life in remote mining areas expanded leisure on the pioneer frontier. William Anderson, nicknamed Bloody Bill, led intense raids as a Confederate guerrilla during the American Civil War in Missouri. On October 26, 1864, he died in a surprise action by Union troops led by Samuel P. Cox. His death dealt a severe blow to pro-Southern guerrilla operations. Alfred Packer, tied to one of Colorado's most talked-about criminal cases, faces the camera during his trial in 1886. Accused of involvement in the deaths of expedition companions after they were trapped in the snow, he became a legendary figure in crime folklore. The death sentence announced in the verdict was later commuted. Lieutenant Charles B. Gatewood, accompanied by 2 Apache scouts, entered the Sierra Madre in 1886 to negotiate Geronimo's surrender to General Nelson A. Miles. The meeting in the Mexican mountains marked a decisive point in the Apache conflicts. Military diplomacy ended decades of armed resistance in the Southwest. William Buffalo Bill Cody appears on horseback beside General Nelson Miles in January 1891 near Wounded Knee. The presence of the showman alongside military command came soon after the tragedy in South Dakota. The meeting documents the final tension of the Indian Wars on the Great Plains. Kinpuash, known as Captain Jack, led the Modoc tribe in a historic resistance against the United States Army. In 1873, he became the only Native American leader sentenced to death for war crimes and was killed at Fort Klamath. The outcome marked the tragic end of one of the costliest conflicts of the Indian Wars. James Butler Hickok, the legendary Wild Bill, posed with his signature coat in 1870, years before his death in Deadwood. The gunman and scout story became a symbol of the Old West's golden era, ending in the famous poker game where he held aces and eights. His fame fueled American folklore. The Pima Desert was the scene of the Wham payroll robbery in 1889, resulting in the theft of gold and silver coins. Despite the escort by Buffalo soldiers, the gang used Arizona's rugged terrain, leading to a trial in Tucson, where all defendants were acquitted. Geronimo and his warriors were photographed in Mexico's Sierra Madre in 1886, shortly before a temporary surrender to General Crook. The Chiricahua Apache group resisted reservation policy, crossing borders to maintain autonomy. A final surrender would come months later, formally ending the Apache Wars. Charles Bowles, the famous Black Bart, carried out his last stagecoach robbery on November 3, 1883, in California. Known for his politeness and the poems he left at crime scenes, he was identified by a handkerchief left behind during his escape. His capture ended one of Wells Fargo's longest robbery sprees. Photographed around 1880 by Ben Whittick, this is one of only 2 pictures accepted as authentic of Billy the Kid, a figure of the Old West. The popular version was retouched and flipped, changing details of the Winchester rifle and a ring on the pinky finger. The original Upham Dedrick image resurfaced and was auctioned in 2011 for $2.3 million. Workers celebrate the final joining of the Sunset Route rails west of the Pecos River in Texas around 1883. The meeting of the locomotives on the wooden structure marks transcontinental rail integration across the American South, boosting trade and settlement in the region. Gold mining in the Yukon reached impressive levels in 1898, as shown by bags filled with ore collected in just 15 days at Gold Run Creek. Increased guarding and the use of reinforced chests protected the fortune that boosted economic development in the remote Canadian region. Armed men guard a shipment of 500 pounds of amalgam at Cottonwood Placers on September 8, 1897. Thomas Michael McKee recorded the private security needed to protect the valuable gold and mercury compound in mining areas. Heavy escort was common to prevent robberies in mining settlements. Bill Stanton controls the wild horse Sandy during a riding competition in Oklahoma in 1916. R.R. Doubleday's photo captures the shift from ranching skills to modern arena sport in the early 20th century. The skill on display reflects cowboy heritage in shaping the American Southwest. Leighton Huffman captured the power of Montana's prairies by photographing the exact moment a wild horse throws its rider to the ground. The rising dust and frozen motion reveal the intensity of bronc riding in the American West in 1898. Territorial control was pushing into the untamed nature of that region. Pancho Villa appears on horseback in a photograph from 1912, a central period of the Mexican Revolution, wearing ammunition belts that symbolize the revolutionary conflict. The image captures the leader's military command and charisma in harsh terrain. His role was decisive in political change and the push for land reform in Mexico. Hunkpapa Lakota leader Sitting Bull became a symbol of native resistance to United States territorial expansion after the Battle of Little Bighorn. His appearance in Buffalo Bill's show in 1885 spread his image worldwide, keeping the fight to protect sacred lands alive. Red Cloud, the influential Oglala Lakota chief, was a central figure in Native resistance against United States expansion. Known for leading the war that bears his name, he fought to protect hunting lands in Wyoming and Montana. His later diplomatic leadership aimed to preserve his people. Belle Starr, the famous bandit queen, used her full Victorian outfits to carry firearms openly or hide them as needed. The boldness of displaying revolvers challenged the social rules of the time, cementing her image as one of the most notorious women of the Old West. Calamity Jane was photographed in Deadwood around 1876, embodying female boldness on the South Dakota frontier. Her presence as a scout and folk figure challenged Victorian-era gender rules, while her work in mining towns secured her place in the mythology of the West. Mickey Free, the mixed-heritage Apache scout, poses beside his wives Ethle and Ochahe in 1888. The image reflects a complex web of alliances and the role of cultural go-between figures during Arizona frontier conflicts. The family structure shows the survival of ancestral customs. The legendary Buffalo Bill poses beside his wife, Louisa Frederici, known as Lulu, in one of the rare moments together during the long and troubled separation process they faced. The couple lived decades apart while Cody toured with his show, reflecting the personal tensions behind the fame. Kate Barnard made history as the first woman elected to public office in Oklahoma around 1910. Her career was marked by fighting child labor and exposing corruption by guardians of Native orphans. Those investigations ruined her career and pushed her into social isolation. Tombstone's mines faced final collapse in 1911 due to uncontrolled rising groundwater and falling silver value on the global market. The shutdown of extraction forced residents to leave and cemented the region's economic decline in the American Southwest. Chief Joseph surrendered to the United States Army on October 5, 1877, in the Bear Paw Mountains. The solemn moment in Montana Territory formally ended the Nez Perce War after a long chase. His peace statement became a symbol of resistance and the tragic end of an era. Wooden buildings in Deadwood show the city's rapid growth during the Black Hills Gold Rush. The crowded businesses like the Tin Shop highlight the emerging commercial setup that supported thousands of prospectors drawn by the promise of mineral wealth. Known for his untamed toughness in early 20th century rodeos, the horse steamboat became the greatest symbol of Wyoming's spirit. His signature silhouette bucking with a rider was immortalized on the state's license plates, representing cowboy heritage and the strength of rural traditions that still shape local identity. Between 1876 and 1887, the Deadwood stagecoach ran the route between Cheyenne, Wyoming, and the Black Hills, South Dakota, carrying passengers, freight, and mail. The photo shows the coach pulled by a team of horses on a mountain road. The Whiskey the Road to Ruin Saloon in Gila Bend operated in 1880 as a social hub in Arizona's dry territory. The wooden front with hand-painted signs and the men gathered on the porch reflect frontier town culture, where leisure and local business blended together. The Beaumont Hotel stood with imposing architecture in Ouray around 1890, serving as a social and logistical hub in Colorado. The carriage parked out front carried passengers in a region shaped by mining and rugged terrain. The town structure supported the local economy and commercial flow. The Pear Street Grocery and Meat Market operated in Beaumont around 1900 under the management of Melton Bowie. As one of the first African-American businessmen in Jefferson County, Bowie combined his carpentry skills with running the local store. the business was a central supply point for the community. Buddy Timmons rides the wild horse Jack Dempsey during Cheyenne frontier days in 1910. The Wyoming event strengthened rodeo tradition as a celebration of early 20th century American West culture. The practice turned ranch work skills into a competitive show with wide popular appeal. Edward W. Johnson served as a federal deputy in Indian Territory, facing dangerous criminals in a time of unstable borders. During an arrest attempt soon after this photo, he was badly wounded in a gunfight and lost his arm from severe injuries. African-American cowboys take part in the Negro State Fair in Bonham, Texas, in 1911. The event showed the importance of these communities in ranching and the rural economy of the southern United States. The gathering of competitors highlights the essential role of black people in building cattle culture. Tuberculosis patients sought Arizona's dry climate in 1903 to ease breathing symptoms in camps outside Phoenix. Treatment consisted of constant exposure to desert air and strict rest. This health migration changed the Southwest's population patterns. Billy Richardson, Johnny Fry, Gus Cliff, and Charlie Cliff represented the speed of the Pony Express in St. Louis around 1860. These riders ran a fast mail system that connected the east and west of the United States before the telegraph was fully established. The logistics were vital for communication during expansion. Chief Plenty Coups represented Native nations at the dedication of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Washington. During the ceremony on November 11, 1921, he placed his headdress and a coup stick on the coffin as a sign of honor. The gesture symbolized the contribution of Native peoples in global conflicts. The Fetterman Monument in Wyoming honors the soldiers who lost their lives in a decisive fight against Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. The battle took place in 1866 when Captain William Fetterman was lured into a decisive ambush. The memorial marks Native resistance and intense conflicts over control of the land. Nevada became the 36th state of the Union on October 31, 1864, to secure political support for Abraham Lincoln and access to vast silver reserves. The rapid admission during the Civil War strengthened the northern economy and secured federal influence in the West through intense mining. Around 1889, Old West figures pose beside the Deadwood stagecoach, bringing together armed men, a woman, and children in a group portrait. Buffalo Bill stands in front of the smaller wheel with Major Burke behind his right shoulder and John Young Nelson on top. The scene records period transportation and clothing. The Gould and Curry Industrial Complex in Virginia City operated in the heart of Nevada Territory in 1868 to process Comstock Lode silver. Its towering smokestacks and wooden structures reflect the scale of mining that transformed the local economy and drove regional technological growth. Mickey Free served as a scout and interpreter during the Apache Wars after being taken as a child, an event that triggered intense military conflict. He worked for the United States Army in the pursuit of Geronimo, using his cultural knowledge to help mediate complex negotiations. Timothy O'Sullivan explored Canyon de Chelly in 1873 as part of the Wheeler expeditions across the American West. Arizona's towering sandstone formations provided ancient shelter for the Navajo people in deep geographic isolation. His documentary work revealed the monumental scale of the region's geology. Albert Jennings Fountain mysteriously disappeared with his son Henry during a trip through New Mexico after taking part in cases against cattle ranchers. Their bodies were never found, creating one of the Old West's greatest mysteries. The political crime involved powerful suspects and shaped regional justice. The geologic formations known as Twin Buttes, dominate the dry landscape around Green River City, Wyoming, in 1872. Recorded during mapping expeditions of the American West, these sandstone towers served as visual landmarks for travelers and transcontinental railroad workers. Camilla Sidney Fly traveled to Sonora in March 1886 with permission from General George Crook to document Native people during the conflict. The Arizona photographer captured rare scenes of camps in Mexican territory, revealing uncommon details of Native life during the Apache Wars. Looking Glass, an influential Nez Perce war leader, rides his horse in front of traditional lodges in 1877. His leadership was vital during his tribe's epic flight toward Canada to avoid surrender to federal troops. The conflict marked one of the last major Native uprisings in the Northwest. Chief Eagle, also known as Atum Elam Wyatt Skill M. Me, belonged to the Salish people on the Flathead Reservation in 1906. His traditional clothing and impressive feather headdress symbolize authority and the preservation of cultural identity in Montana. Native leadership faced the challenges of life on designated reservations. The portrait of an Apache man in White River, photographed in 1900, documents life on the Fort Apache Reservation during a period of forced cultural transition in Arizona. Western-style clothing reflects government pressure to assimilate, while his expression preserves the dignity of his people. Members of the Salish Nation, known as the Flathead, appear on horseback in Montana in 1899. The mix of a traditional hide lodge with a wooden cabin in the background shows forced transition and cultural adaptation driven by settler expansion in the northwestern United States. A delegation of 7 Crow chiefs in Montana reflects a time of intense land negotiations between Native nations and the federal government in the late 19th century. Wearing traditional blankets and elements of Western clothing, these leaders sought to secure their people's survival amid land loss. The Piegan warrior displays an impressive feather headdress and holds a coop stick, a central tool in the honor culture of the Great Plains. Touching an enemy without killing him represented the highest form of bravery and social prestige, reinforcing the importance of war rituals in maintaining tribal status. Photographed in the 1870s, a hunter of the Uinta Ute people appears with his dog, showing the central role of canines in survival and in the worldview of these Native communities. This partnership helped tracking in dry lands and strengthened the safety of nomadic camps. Representing the rich culture of the Great Basin Native peoples, a Ute hunter was photographed in 1899 during an expedition across dry terrain. Traditional clothing and a well-equipped horse show this nation's deep bond with the land and the survival of ancestral customs in a century of change. Apache leader Victorio organized persistent resistance against military forces and settlers in the Southwest between 1879 and 1880. His guerrilla tactics allowed his group to avoid capture many times across Texas and Mexico. The conflict highlighted the complex struggle for Native autonomy in the region. Harry Yunt looks out over the Rocky Mountains from Berthoud Pass around 1874 before becoming Yellowstone's first park ranger. His solitary presence in Colorado symbolizes the shift from mountain man to conservation guardian. Watching over the land was essential to protect local wildlife and plant life. In the isolation of the Dakota Badlands around 1885, Theodore Roosevelt sought refuge and renewal after the simultaneous loss of his mother and his first wife. This experience as a rancher shaped his resilient character and his conservation-minded beliefs, elements that would be key to his later political path and presidency. Thomas Whaley poses for a portrait in 1880, decades after establishing his home in San Diego. The businessman built the house in 1857 using locally fired bricks to create one of California's first 2-story structures. The building served as a courthouse and theater, becoming a landmark of civic life. In Austin, Texas, United States, 1892, the north front of the Texas state capitol is seen from 17th Street, just 4 years after its completion in 1888. The surrounding area still appears open, with few buildings and animals moving around. The photo records the start of urban growth in the late 19th century. During the 1870s, the city of San Antonio, Texas, is shown with dirt streets filled with covered wagons pulled by horses and mules. Merchants, ranchers, and travelers move among buildings with business signs. The prospector in his covered wagon pulled by donkeys in Las Vegas shows the ongoing search for precious minerals in the Nevada desert between 1900 and 1920. The use of these animals and the canvas cover reflects the adaptation needed to face dry weather and long distances in the region. Ranch workers ate their meals beside the traditional chuckwagon during long cattle drives across the American plains. Simple food and short rest were essential to endure the exhausting routine under the sun. This custom shaped frontier culture and survival. William Cody brings his Wild West show to Europe and arrives in Munich in 1890. Among tents and classic costumes, the American troupe includes native performers and cowboys in a skill show that fascinates the Bavarian elite. The event spreads the Old West myth through German culture. Texas Jack Jr. embodied the mystique of the American cowboy on international tours that reached Liverpool in 1887. Fringe outfits and double holsters reinforced the Old West hero stereotype, turning the cowboy into a global entertainment product that fascinated crowds in Europe. Arizona John Burke poses for a portrait in 1890 as the lead publicity agent for Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. His skill in shaping the image of the American West turned historical figures into international legends. The promotional push was decisive in making the genre popular worldwide. The American Cowboy Group poses for a historic photo at the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. The World's Fair served as a showcase for Old West mythology, turning rural figures into cultural icons. The event marked the shift from the real frontier to popular artistic representation. Louis Riel founded the Provisional Government of Manitoba to protect Métis land and culture against the expansion of the Canadian government. After the Red River Rebellion, he lived for years in exile in the United States before returning to lead a new resistance. His death after conviction in 1885 turned him into a symbol of Native struggle. Representatives of the Waco and Wichita tribes were brought to the Texas Cotton Palace in 1912 for an exhibit in Waco. The event aimed to display the culture of the native peoples of the Southern Plains in an agricultural fair setting. The city carries in its name the heritage of that native group that once lived in the state's central region. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer posed in 1872 wearing fringed leather clothing and a fur cap while holding his Springfield 50-70 rifle. The outfit and weapon symbolize his self-image as a frontier explorer shortly before decisive conflicts on the Central Plains. In the military portrait, George Armstrong Custer is linked to the Battle of Little Bighorn in Montana, United States, fought on June 25 and 26, 1876. In the clash, the 7th Cavalry Regiment was defeated by a combined force of Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho. The image records the uniform, insignia, and typical look of the era. George Armstrong Custer studies maps beside Bloody Knife around 1876. The Arikara Scout was the officer's favored guide and provided vital information about the land and the movements of rival groups on the plains. Cooperation between the military and Allied Native Scouts was a central tactical element. Photographed by Charles Boehm on September 15, 1878, this group of buffalo hunters in Denver symbolizes the intensive commercial hunting that wiped out herds in Colorado. The activity was a crucial economic driver for railroad expansion and for supplying outposts across the American West. The Eaton brothers from Pittsburgh appear in 1890 with their families at Custer Trail Ranch in Medora. Located in Dakota Territory, the ranch symbolizes the start of dude ranching, where visitors from the east sought the experience of rustic life, helping reshape the economy and tourism on the northern frontier. Uruguayan artist Joe Mora documented the American frontier through detailed illustrations that capture the technical evolution of cavalry and civilian saddles. His maps and artwork preserve the visual identity of cowboys, offering an authentic record of the West's material culture. Louis Nicolas Flaubert revolutionized ballistics by inventing the one-piece metallic cartridge in 1845, combining primer and projectile. This technical innovation allowed the development of more efficient and safer firearms in Paris. The breakthrough laid the foundation for the modern global arms industry. Famous for bringing the Old West to life in his traveling shows, Buffalo Bill Cody died in 1917, leaving a lasting legacy in popular culture worldwide. His path as a scout and showman helped shape the image of the American frontier, influencing generations of films and books. The legendary lawman Wyatt Earp looks over the Colorado River toward Arizona in 1925, years after the famous OK Corral gunfight. His reflective stance by the river marks the twilight of a frontier era, symbolizing the final shift from the Old West to 20th century modern life. The legendary Wyatt Earp was photographed for the last time on January 11, 1929, shortly before his death at 80 from cystitis. The life of the former marshal and central figure of the OK Corral gunfight ended in Los Angeles, marking the end of a transition era between the Old West and modern times. Wyoming's early move in 1869 granted women full voting rights, decades ahead of nationwide suffrage in the United States. The activism of figures like Alice Paul at the 1920 convention reflects the persistence of the fight for political representation and civil equality in the country. Martha Calamity Jane Canary Burke poses on horseback during the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo in 1901. In front of a row of teepees from the Indian Congress, the frontierswoman reinforces her public image tied to the frontier and entertainment. The event celebrates American expansion in the early 20th century. Bartholomew Bat Masterson, born in 1853 and who died in 1921, appears in a studio portrait wearing a hat and suit with a watch chain. He worked in the Old West as a buffalo hunter, gambler, and lawman in Kansas, including Dodge City. Later, he worked as a journalist in New York City. Men pose with 1849 Colt pocket revolvers and blades during the height of the California Gold Rush. Carrying compact weapons was a symbol of status and necessity in frontier territory. The elegant clothing contrasts with gear ready for use in a time of expansion and conflict. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.